So it seems to me that there are a number of ways in which the shale gas game has been misportrayed. One, that resources have often been exaggerated. The economic impact of jobs have often been exaggerated. And now, in essence, what the gas was for has been misportrayed. And what we're looking at down the line is higher prices, a consumer squeeze where the exports are driving up the price there, so their costs are going up. So from beginning to end, it sounds like this has been, not above board.
Right. Well, I mean, I just try and put all the pieces together and present the numbers, and it is what it is.
So it sounds like at least take with a big rock of salt whatever you're hearing from a gas proponent. So we sort of touched on the drilling a lot, in part to meet debt service, that kind of thing. So it sounds to me like the drilling level right now is not justified because there's already too much natural gas because the price is down. And the investment's been hyped. You can't get on the internet without some ad popping up saying, invest in natural gas. So it seems to me, are analysts still in that bullish position, or are those a few of the less scrupulous analysts out there who are just trying to drum up business? I mean, what really, is this a bubble, and are people starting to get cold feet?
I think that you are beginning to see more and more analysts really taking harder looks at this. To my mind, when I first started looking at it, and really over the last couple of years, I kept sitting back and thinking, this is tulip mania. I mean, this is,
it's too good to be true. Well, guess what? It's too good to be true.
Yeah, it's too good to be true, and I kept thinking, when are people really going to start asking the hard questions? But it's as though, it was a herd mentality. I mean, everybody was just in such a frenzy over this, but I think you're now beginning to see, I find it quite interesting that the Times exposed so much of this 7 months ago, and they were vilified for it. I was vilified for it. I was part of that story. And yet, one of the interesting things, I mean, from my personal perspective, one of the interesting things was nobody, without exception, after that story, no one attacked the work I'd done. They only attacked me personally and said, who are you going to believe? Some goat farmer from Fort Worth? Which is terribly funny. But it also speaks volumes. But now you're beginning to see some more of the mainstream media. Bloomberg did a story just last week, and the headline, part of the headline read, shale gas bubble. So I think you are beginning to see some analysts take a closer look. You've got to start asking these questions. Someone needs to really start pressuring these companies. Why are you still producing? It is not even in your best interest, if you're strictly looking at it from a price perspective, to keep producing. But of course, if you can't make debt service without producing, then that's a whole other story indeed.
If you're going to go bankrupt, you'll do anything, even if it hurts the long term. I mean, one other thing I've heard is that because oil prices are so high, there's a premium on shale gas liquids as well. And so fields where there are some liquid hydrocarbons can be profitable, but along with those liquids come natural gas. So there it goes. So, you keep pushing more supply. So there's the high price of oil, which also, of course, oil fields produce gas, winds up meaning that there's a natural gas glut because you can't produce oil without getting the gas.
One interesting thing about unconventional oil, to my mind, is in the beginning, because these technologies were so new, the industry came to investors and said, look, we don't really know how to price this, we don't really know how to project this, but here's what we think are reasonable projections. And so everybody looked at them, and many of them were based on what conventional wells had done. And as we're finding out now, through historical production history, those correlations don't really exist. They're not turning out to exist. But what's interesting to me is that no one could verify numbers for quite some time. I mean, you had to take them at their word and assume that their projections were reasonable and that they would probably be somewhere in the ballpark. And no one could really verify this. When the moment that we had enough production history in the Barnett where we could start verifying numbers, and numbers started coming out and they didn't look quite as rosy as originally thought, that's when operators began selling off assets in the Barnett. And I find that fascinating. And then, when the money's dried up in the capital markets after the economic downturn, what did the companies announce? They announced, we're going to go into unconventional oil now, and we're going to do the same thing in unconventional oil that we did in unconventional gas. And the first thing I thought was, I bet you are. But is there going to be a whole nother generation of suckers? I mean, because how convenient. No one will be able to check your numbers in unconventional oil for a while either. So it's a good game if you can play it. It's a very good game indeed.
Well, I'm convinced there's money to be made in shale gas, but I'm not convinced it's being made by the ones drilling.
Right.
Or at least not their companies. And that's
Right.
what I'm wondering, are some of these guys simply driving their companies into the ground while they collect large salaries in the meantime? Or indeed, are they simply looking for that next sucker out there they can flip their leases to? Because if you can wind up selling to a Chinese company for $15,000 an acre what you bought for $1,000 or $100 an acre, you've made money. You haven't drilled anything. You haven't done anything to produce energy, but you've made money.
Aubrey McClendon, CEO of Chesapeake Energy, I actually have a quote from him from an analyst call, and he basically states, I can't remember the quote verbatim right now, but he essentially says, why do I even need to drill gas, basically, when I can flip these leases and make, 10 times my money? Right. I mean, he's very upfront about it.
So that sounds like a derivative market and bundling bad mortgages into AAA-rated securities to me.
It's an interesting play. We'll see how it plays out.